I never thought I'd be the guy who walks out of his own anniversary party. Truth is, I didn't even want the party. Rachel said it'd help us reconnect. I just said yes. 30 people, backyard lights, grill smoke, and somehow, Colin, her ex, was there. She said a friend brought him. Then Tara, tipsy and loud, raises her glass. "Girl, you're so smart. Having your backup husband right here at the party?" Everyone laughs, including Rachel. But it wasn't the joke that broke me. It was the way she looked at him. Like she'd already decided who she'd choose if things went south. Before the song could change, before the beer in my hand warmed, I set it down, slipped off my ring, walked up to Colin, dropped it in his hand. "Tag in, buddy. She's yours now." Silence, not shock, just truth hanging in the air. Staying means swallowing that smile. Leaving means starting over. So tell me, when keeping your dignity means walking away, and her smile already chose someone else, are you still plan A? Here's the part no one posts about. 5 years in, love didn't crash, it drifted. We stopped fighting for the good stuff and started negotiating chores. Our best conversations were grocery lists. She went to bed with earbuds. I fell asleep to the TV glow because silence felt louder. In the morning, 2 toothbrushes stood like polite neighbors. On Sundays I grilled because that's what dads and husbands do, and she said thank you like I was a helpful coworker, not her man. We had decent photos, steady jobs, plans that always started with, "after this quarter." When friends asked how we were, I said busy and meant lonely. I kept telling myself every marriage has a season, and seasons turn if you wait them out. But waiting is still a choice, and choices add up. Ran the dishwasher on empty. The house hummed like it didn't notice. How long you keep pretending is your choice. I'd already stopped. She wanted a party. 5 years deserves something, Rachel said, kissing my cheek like a promise delivered by habit. I shrugged and said sure, because guys like me don't make a scene over cake and paper lanterns. She called it a chance to reconnect, to bring people together. I heard, "Prove we're okay." I told myself a night of laughter could knock some dust off the shelves. The backyard was easy to dress up. String lights, yard games, the old speaker we use for football Sundays. I ordered extra ribs, marinated the chicken, made a playlist that sounded like summers we used to have. She handled invites. I didn't ask who was on the list. That felt controlling, not trusting. Besides, we know the same circle. Mostly. If there were names I didn't recognize, I figured they were coworkers or gym friends. Truth is, I was relieved to have a job. Feed people, keep the grill hot, smile for pictures, let the party carry us for a night. Prep week moved like a conveyor belt. Store runs, ice bags, folding chairs. That moment you realize you don't have enough propane. She was efficient, texting, confirming, laughing at messages I didn't read. I noticed a couple of unfamiliar dishes on the potluck spreadsheet and a few +1s I couldn't place. I told myself this is what adults do. You mix circles, you cheer, you act like a team even when you don't feel like one. I ironed a decent shirt and wiped down the cooler like it mattered. The yard looked good when the sun started to drop. Fresh cut grass, the flag on the fence line, a yard my dad would have nodded at. When the first cars rolled in, I turned up the music and put on the apron with the barbecue stains I never could wash out. I decided to be the man who makes everyone feel welcome. It's a simple mission. Simple is safe. Safe can hide a lot if you let it. People arrived in waves. Neighbors, church friends, a couple of Rachel's co-workers who shook my hand like we'd met. Then he stepped through the gate. Colin. I knew the name, not the shape of him, until that second. Tall, easy grin, the kind of confidence you don't have to announce. Rachel's smile tilted in a way I hadn't seen in months, maybe longer. My chest did a small, stupid tighten, and I told it to relax. Exes show up at weddings, birthdays, reunions. This is America. We keep the peace. I flipped ribs, told myself I'm not 16, and let the sizzle cover the noise in my head. Tara drifted over with a plastic cup and a louder laugh. People clustered on the patio, toasting nothing in particular. I could have walked over and asked a simple question. Who invited him? But I didn't want to sound jealous. Pride is quiet like that. When a stranger starts to feel at home in your house, how long do you pretend you don't notice? It happened fast and slow at the same time. Tara lifted her cup, voice a notch above the music, and said, "To Rachel's real rock, her backup husband." Laughter popped like fireworks, harmless until you remember what fireworks can burn. Rachel laughed too. Not the awkward kind, the private kind. Colin didn't flinch. He wore that half smile that says he expects doors to open. My hand found my beer. I set it down because it suddenly felt wrong to be holding anything. The ring on my finger felt heavy, like a decision finally landing. I walked over without hurry. No one backed up to make space. I slipped the band off, slow, so I wouldn't forget the weight, and dropped it into his open palm. "Tag in, buddy. She's yours now." The music died. People stared at the grass, at their phones, at anywhere but me. I didn't wait for explanations. I walked through my kitchen, past the photos we posed for, into a night that felt honest for the first time in months. The quiet hit harder than the laughter. Highway lines slid under my headlights like a tape I'd already worn thin. I kept waiting for anger to show up and swing, but what came was clarity. Cold, steady, almost polite. The dashboard clock didn't matter. The porch light at Ryan's place did. He keeps it on for family, even when he doesn't know they're coming. I parked by the curb, left the engine ticking, and listened to a neighborhood that still believed in bedtime. No music, no talk radio, just my breath and that small clink when I pulled the keys free. Ryan opened the door in a t-shirt, took one look, and stepped aside without a single question. "Come in, Evan," he said. No lecture, no questions, like he'd been saving a place for me all along. That's the thing about brothers. They read the weather in your face and skip the forecast. The house smelled like pepperoni and pine sol, like a place that can hold you together for one night. I set my phone on the counter, face down, like it had already said enough. The phone started dancing anyway. A little buzz, then another, then a whole string of them like a fire alarm that only I could hear. Missed calls stacked. Her name, then Tara's, then numbers I didn't recognize. A few voicemail icons, a few "we should talk" texts, and one photo from the party I couldn't open. Ryan slid a cold beer across the counter and nodded at the stove clock, the kind of nod that says, "Eat, drink, sit." I chose not to open a single message. I watched them bloom and fade until the screen fought to stay alive. 23 missed calls look like proof to people who haven't lived in a quiet marriage. To me, it was sirens after a fire. I held the side button and let it go dark. The room got bigger. Should I answer and let the story write me, or stay silent long enough to write the next line myself? Ryan knows how to let a man breathe. He popped the cap with his wedding ring and left the opener where I could reach it. No speeches. No, be the bigger person. Just the game on low and a plate with 2 slices of pizza that tasted like high school and Saturdays. We sat there while my pulse settled. Finally, he asked one question that didn't come with an exit ramp. "How long have you felt it?" I didn't deflect. I didn't make a joke. I told him about earbuds at bedtime, grocery list conversations, the way "thank you" had started sounding like office talk. He listened like a mechanic under a car, patient, hands steady, no rush to pronounce it totaled. He didn't hate her for me. He just made room for me to say it out loud. And when I did, the floor stopped tilting. Sometimes the most grown-up thing a man my age can do is say, "It's not working," and mean it. I laid out the night like evidence on a kitchen table. Backyard lights, the laugh, the smirk, the ring leaving my finger because staying felt like lying to my own face. Ryan didn't flinch. He just breathed out slow and said, "Good." Then he added the line I didn't know I needed. "Losing things isn't as bad as losing your self-respect." It sounded like something our dad might have said after a game where the scoreboard didn't tell the truth. We talked costs, photos on the wall, shared bills, the dog that likes her more. He didn't sell me on revenge or mercy. He sold me on clean lines. "You'll get through the paperwork," he said, "but tonight you get through the night." He tossed me a spare blanket and took the couch without asking where I wanted to sleep. In families like ours, love looks like logistics that don't need a meeting. I closed my eyes and saw the backyard anyway. Sleep didn't come, replay did. The ceiling fan turned like a slow clock while my mind spooled the same scene. Tara's toast, Rachel's smile, Colin's hand open like a checkout tray. I tried counting breaths like the therapist on a podcast said once, but every exhale landed back on that grin. Not cruel. Worse, comfortable. Familiar enough to tell me it wasn't the first time. I thought about dads I work with who eat their pride to keep the calendar steady, about a vet in my gym who said, "Pain is a teacher if you show up for class." The refrigerator hummed, the neighborhood slept, the porch light kept its promise. Somewhere after midnight, the anger finally knocked and found there was nothing left to burn. Only facts. Only the next step. If the proof you can't unsee lives in a look, and the house you pay for no longer feels like yours, what do you do when the sun finally hits the blinds? Morning tells the truth. The sun came up like it always does, indifferent to my mess, and I drove back to the house that still had my name on the lease. The party smell lingered. Charcoal, spilled beer, something sweet gone flat. Paper plates sagged on the patio table. A half-deflated balloon bobbed by the sliding door like it was apologizing. I moved room to room on muscle memory. Hamper, dresser, bathroom cabinet, socks, razors, passport, the folder with our insurance cards. No slammed drawers. Not today. In the bedroom, the bed was still made from the morning before, that tight hotel tuck she likes. I took the duffel from the closet and filled it with the life you only notice when you're leaving. Phone chargers, the good belt, the watch my dad gave me when I got promoted. On the nightstand sat her tablet, screen asleep, a little red light blinking like a waiting turn signal. I told myself to keep walking. I didn't. A tap woke it. No passcode. Her email sat open beneath a row of messaging icons. Blue, green, one with a white lightning bolt I never use. I press the one she does. Threads stacked like fence boards. Rachel at the top, Colin 2 lines below. Their bubble opened to a river. Gym jokes, lunch photos, late night, "You up?" with a winking face. Nothing explicit. Worse, because it traveled where marriage actually lives. Complaints about me wrapped in humor. Nostalgia staged as destiny. "You always got me," she wrote. "You still do," he sent back. My jaw set, the way it does when a dentist says, "You'll feel pressure." I read to the end. Once a man starts, he finishes the page. 3 weeks ago. "Glad you can make the party." His answer, "Wouldn't miss it." Her reply, "I've missed this." If the betrayal doesn't need a bedroom, only a screen and a smile, what exactly counts as cheating where you live? Evidence demands respect. I set the tablet flat and took photos with my phone like a claims adjuster after a storm. Timestamps, names, the cadence of 2 people testing a bridge and calling it friendship. I didn't edit, didn't crop, didn't dramatize. I just collected. A picture of a cappuccino with a heart in the foam, a caption about long meetings sent 5 minutes later, a laughing emoji that read like a secret handshake. In between, there were my messages. "Need anything from the store? What time should I start the grill?" Floating like postcards to a house that no longer forwarded my mail. I moved to the office and grabbed the fireproof bag where we keep our papers. Birth certificates, titles, tax returns, the boring bones of a life. The bag felt heavier than the duffel. I didn't take a victory lap. There was nothing to win. Only a record to keep, because memories argue and documents don't. That's something my dad taught me too. Clarity needs action. I loaded the trunk, shut the door soft, and didn't look back at the kitchen window even though I felt it stare. In the driveway, I pulled up Harold Lane's number, the attorney a coworker swore by after his own train wreck. Harold answered on the second ring with a voice like an old oak desk. I kept it clean. Brief facts, no adjectives, dates where I had them. He didn't gasp or judge. He asked for copies, a timeline, and a time to meet. Then he said what professionals say when they've seen the same storm wear different names. "We can start the filing today, if you're sure." I watched a kid ride his bike past the mailbox, one hand on the handlebar, the other chasing a loose bag down the street. I thought about all the fathers I know who steady the bike and let go when it's time. "I'm sure," I said. "Send me the forms." I hit end and breathed. Anger is loud. Awakening is quiet. The call clicked off and everything inside me settled like dust after a slammed door. The facts were colder than fury and twice as sharp. The house behind me wasn't a crime scene. It was a museum of a story I couldn't live inside anymore. I sat there long enough to feel the seatbelt mark fade from my shoulder, then turned the key. The engine found its note. On the passenger seat, The fireproof bag weighted like a stubborn truth. I wasn't plotting speeches or drafting texts. I was counting next steps. Copy files, meet Harold, move what's mine, leave what isn't, tell Ryan the plan. A neighbor waved. I waved back. Normal carried on. That's the first lesson of endings. Nothing around you explodes. You do the small things right and let the big thing be over. If this isn't rage but recognition, if the paperwork is just the price of peace, what's the very next honest move I make? Paper tells the story feelings try to blur. I logged into the bank, opened the statements, and let the printer hum like a steady engine. Pages slid out warm, crisp, non-negotiable. I cleared Ryan's table, salt shaker to the side, 2 beers as paperweights, and started drawing lines with a yellow highlighter. Grocery runs I recognized, gas stations near my commute, the hardware store where I bought those stubborn screws. Then there were the outliers. Midday charges downtown, the same cafe tag repeating like a chorus. I circled dates, wrote times in the margins, and built a map of our weeks. You don't need detective school to see a pattern. You need a ruler and the nerve to use it. I kept the tone in my head flat, like a coworker walking me through a spreadsheet. Here's the purchase. Here's the claim. Here's the gap. Every marriage has noise. This was music, arranged, rehearsed, performed in daylight. When the facts play that clean, the only question left is whether you'll listen. Valentine's Day was supposed to be simple. Flowers on the passenger seat, a reservation at the Italian place that still knows my name, a night to reset the clock. I pulled the statement for that week and felt the room lean. Mid-afternoon, same day, coffee shop downtown, a charge that looked innocent until you said it next to her text. Working late, don't wait up. I remembered lighting the candles anyway, letting the bread get cold, assuming traffic or a boss that ran meetings like marathons. On the bank line, it was right there, foam hearts in a cup, not spreadsheets and fluorescent lights. I penciled a note, time, place, OT claim, and slid it into the pile. I wanted it to be a one-off, a hiccup you forgive because life is messy. But evidence rarely travels alone. If your romantic holiday has proof on paper that contradicts the story you lived, do you protect the tradition or protect the truth that just asked to be seen? March didn't bother with flowers. It brought a pattern. 3 more midday charges at 2 cafes within walking distance of her gym, all on days she texted about back-to-back meetings. The receipts told a different schedule. Lattes paired with paninis, timestamps that lined up with his messages. Good seeing you. Same time next week? I stopped guessing and started grouping. Weekdays here, weekends there, cash withdrawals that matched exactly the kind of places where split checks don't look like dates. I'm a dad, a coworker, a man who budgets the boring stuff. I know what normal spending looks like. This wasn't it. The longer the lines connected, the quieter I got. Not numb, just precise. Precision is mercy when your heart wants to dramatize. I laid March next to February and felt the page gain weight. And still, no hotel rooms, no receipts that shout. They didn't need them. The story had already moved into the space where marriages live. Time, attention, intimacy on layaway. Ryan pulled up a chair like we were fixing a lawnmower. He doesn't do speeches. He does tools. Highlighter, pen, a calculator older than our first cars. We went page by page, date by date, and he kept me honest when my temper tried to skip ahead. Count, don't color, he said, like a coach teaching film study. By the time the game ended on TV, the table looked like a playbook. 15 mismatches, her alibi versus the ledger, spread across 2 months. Some were small, a coffee here, a smoothie there. Some were big enough to cast a shadow across the day. We didn't round up, didn't pad the numbers. We underlined the ones we could prove and boxed the ones that needed context. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like inventory after a long season. Ryan tapped the stack and nodded once, the way our dad did when a job was done right. Now you know what you know, he said. Act like it. Files outlive feelings. I clipped each month into a folder, labeled them in block letters, and started a simple log on legal paper. Date, location, amount, claimed reason, actual. I titled the top sheet The Truth File, not because I needed drama, but because I needed the name to stare back at me when doubt tried to talk me out of my own eyes. On the last line, I added a summary: 15 verified conflicts, escalating contact, pre-party coordination. That word landed like a gavel. Coordination. This wasn't a drift. It was a plan with flexible morality and friendly witnesses. I slid the folders into the fireproof bag beside the titles and birth certificates. The zipper closed with a sound that felt final. My phone stayed face down. No victory playlist, just the clock on the stove and the hum of a house I was leaving piece by piece. If this is the record I stand on in court and in my own mirror, what's the next move that honors it? Bad news never books an appointment, it just rings. My phone lit up with an unknown number while I was labeling folders, and I almost let it die. I answered anyway. Evan, it's Derek, from the party. I pictured him in a ball cap, the guy who grills at tailgates and never stirs the pot. His voice was careful, like a man carrying hot coffee across carpet. Look, I don't want trouble. I feel like you should know something. I stepped onto Ryan's porch so the night air could keep me honest. He cleared his throat. That toast? The backup husband line? It wasn't drunk improv. I didn't breathe. He kept going. Tara workshopped it all week in the group chat, said it would be hilarious. The porch light buzzed. A moth kept missing the bulb. I should have said something sooner, he added. I froze. I leaned on the railing that Dad once sanded for Ryan and said, "Tell me straight, Derek. Don't edit it for my feelings." Truth arrives with details. Derek exhaled and gave me the ones that matter. Rachel knew. She laughed at it Tuesday, said you'd roll with it, said it would lighten the mood if things felt stiff. Tuesday. 2 days before the lanterns were strung, 3 before I marinated the ribs like tradition could hold a roof in place. He said Colin wasn't a surprise +1. He'd been on the text thread swapping winks and playlists. I'm sorry, man, Derek finished. You handled it better than I would have. The apology wasn't the point. The planning was. I stared down at Ryan's driveway, remembered teaching my nephew to ride a bike there, how you don't push hard when a kid is wobbling. You steady, then you step back. Someone had steadied this bit. Someone I married. Thanks for telling me, I said. After the call ended, the porch felt wider. If your spouse approves the joke that breaks you in public, what part of the private story do you keep? Shock is loud. Clarity is a low hum that fills the room. I stood on that porch and felt the story lock into place like a seatbelt. My chest quit trying to bargain. The hurt didn't vanish. It just stopped driving. I could name the timeline now without flinching. Friendly texts turned confessions, a holiday detour in daylight, a rehearsal dinner masquerading as a party. I wasn't special in the worst way, just a man who trusted, then verified. The night air smelled like cut grass and detergent from someone's dryer vent. Across the street, a porch swing complained softly, the sound of a home doing what homes do: hold. I went back inside, filed Derek's call under outside confirmation, and poured water instead of whiskey. I thought about guys like me, dads, co-workers, who've had to let the facts win. It felt less like a collapse and more like a foundation check. If the footing is cracked, you don't paint the walls. You call the crew and start over. Ryan reads me like old mail. One look at my face and he muted the game. I told him everything Derek said, the group chat, the Tuesday green light, the playlist with Colin's fingerprints on it. He didn't pace or curse. He listened, elbow on the table, thumb worrying the label off a bottle the way he did before big plays when we were kids. When I finished, he nodded once like a catcher signaling the pitch. You didn't lose your wife, he said. You lost an illusion. The line hit like a clean hit to center. No spin, no trick hop. He kept going. There's grief in that, but there's relief too, because illusions cost maintenance. We stacked the folders, squared the corners, and built a short list on the back of an envelope. Scan docs, send to Harold, bag up what's mine, don't argue with ghosts. He clapped my shoulder and left the light on in the hallway. Sometimes love is a checklist that lets you move. Sleep found me like rain after heat, slow, then steady. The fan hummed the house to quiet, and for the first time in days, I didn't replay the backyard. I pictured a different scene, a clean desk, a pen that doesn't skip, a calendar with boxes I can actually own. I woke once to the creak of pipes and didn't reach for my phone. There was nothing in it I needed at 2 a.m. Morning would bring coffee, a scanner, and a signature that tells the clerk what's already true. I thought about the men at work who rebuilt after layoffs, about a veteran at the gym who started over at 49 and said, "You honor the past by not living in it." The porch light was still on, doing its quiet job. My job had changed. Not husband, not fixer, just a man choosing clean over comfortable. If I finally slept because I know what I know, when the sun comes up, what's the first honest step I take to match it? Business first, feelings later. Harold called mid-morning with the calm of a man who's watched storms pass for 30 years. "Rachel wants counseling," he said, voice steady as an old courthouse floor. He laid out the options like file folders: joint session, temporary agreements, a cooling-off period where everyone promises to behave. I pictured the couches, the tissues, the careful words we'd both learned to say. I've sat in staff meetings that felt the same: polite, circular, a lot of nodding around a decision no one will make. Harold didn't push. He asked what I wanted, then gave me the sentence that matters: "Whatever you decide, document your reasons." I looked at the stack of proof on Ryan's table, at the yellow lines I'd drawn, at the ring-shaped pail on my finger. Counseling saves people who lost their way. It doesn't rescue people already packing a different life. "Note this," I told him. "I'll listen, but I won't pretend." He hummed once, the sound a gavel makes before it drops. A boundary has to be plain enough to read from the back row. "No counseling," I told Harold. "Not as a stall. She can move, or move in with Colin. Either way, I'm moving on." He didn't celebrate or scold. He typed. I felt the words leave my mouth and land somewhere I could finally stand. I thought about dads at work who split holidays with grace, about a coworker who once said, "A firm no is a kindness if you mean it." Harold scheduled a brief meeting for logistics only: keys, accounts, the boring bones of untangling. I agreed, with one condition: public place, short window, no back-and-forth history lessons. He promised to keep it tight. After we hung up, I walked the block and let my feet choose the pace. A neighbor waved from his truck. I waved back like a man not hiding. If you know the bridge is out and the detour is longer but safer, do you still drive forward because the view used to be pretty? The inbox blinked like a porch light. Rachel's email arrived with a subject line that sounded like a sigh. "We're overreacting." She wrote about stress at work, about how jokes land wrong when people are tired, about how I'd embarrassed her by making a scene. She said "we" a lot, the way companies do when no one will claim the memo. There were paragraphs about history, good memories laid out like a closing argument for nostalgia. She asked for a chance to reset the tone, maybe try a long weekend away. I read it twice, once as the man who grilled in our backyard, once as the man packing a fireproof bag. Both versions of me saw the same sentence shining through all the words: this wasn't her fault. The cursor hovered over reply, blinking like a metronome. I remembered Harold's advice: document your reasons, and slid her email into a folder named for what it was: explanation without ownership. The facts stayed where I left them. Clean lines travel better than clever speeches. I opened a new email and kept it short enough to fit on a postcard. "I've reviewed the messages and the timeline. I'm proceeding with counsel. Please direct all communication through Harold Lane. No adjectives, no rage, dates and decisions, not wounds." I CC'd Harold, attached the summary sheet from the truth file, and hit send with the same calm I used to pay the light bill. Then I drafted a second note just for me, a list titled "Next Honest Steps." Scan everything. Box what's mine. Return what isn't. No late-night replies. No drive-bys. No checking her socials to measure anyone's pain. I taped the list to Ryan's fridge because kitchens beat confessionals when you're changing a life. My phone buzzed twice with the system receipts, one sent, one delivered, and then the room got quiet again. Quiet, I've learned, isn't empty. It's a space you have to fill on purpose, or someone else's story will volunteer. Silence is a tool if you hold it right. I powered the phone down and set it screen first on the counter like a lid on boiling water. My left hand looked unfamiliar without the ring, lighter and somehow older at the same time. I noticed the faint tan line a band leaves when it's done its season. It didn't make me sad. It made me accurate. I rinsed a plate, wiped the table, and breathed like a man who's paid his share and is done haggling. Ryan came in from the garage with a look that asked and didn't press. "You good?" he said. "Getting there," I answered, and meant it. We watched a few innings with the sound low, two brothers letting the game carry the minutes. When he turned the volume up for the seventh, I stood, stretched, and felt the floor hold. There was work ahead, but none of it required me to shrink. If my voice is finally steady and my path is finally straight, what's the next boundary I draw and keep? Public places keep tempers honest. Harold set the meat at a diner with chrome edges and a bell that still works when the door opens. He took a booth 3 down, legal pad out, eyes on the paper like a man reading the weather. I sat where the morning sun could find me, ordered coffee I barely planned to drink, and let the clatter of plates build a fence around whatever was coming. The waitress called me hun, topped me off, and left me to line up my facts, dates, messages, the ring leaving my hand because dignity demanded it. I rehearsed nothing. I wanted plain words, not a speech. When the bell chimed again, I didn't turn fast. I wanted my face to be settled before hers showed. I rubbed the pale band on my finger like a reminder label and watched steam slip off the cup. A family in the corner passed pancakes. Life goes on in places like this. That was the point. Reality looks tired. Rachel slid into the booth across from me, thinner, eyes bruised by sleep she hadn't earned. No makeup tricks, no party gloss, just a woman who knew a door had closed. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, hands folded like a student late to class. I let the silence sit long enough to set the tone. She started with small talk that didn't fit the room, traffic, schedules, the kind of daylight words that used to carry us through weekends. Then she reached for the script I expected. "We should at least try counseling." The waitress came by. We both said no to food. I asked for water. Rachel stared at my cup like it held a verdict. Across the aisle, a dad cut a waffle into squares for his kid, the kind of steady work marriage needs to be real. If I soften now, after everything I've documented, do I betray the man who finally chose the truth over a comfortable lie? "Nothing happened," she said, eyes on her hands. "We never slept together. We never even—" I raised a finger and kept my voice level. "If I'd invited an ex to our anniversary party, let my friends toast her as my backup wife, and texted her at midnight about how you don't get me, would you call that nothing?" She looked like the answer hurt her teeth. "It wasn't like that," she tried. I slid one page from the stack, dates, locations, the coffee receipts that lined up with working late. "Then tell me what it was," I said. "Because these are choices, not typos." The diner noise made a soft curtain. Forks, ice, the register drawer. "It brought up feelings," she said finally. I was confused. Confusion, I thought, is honest for a week, not a season. "I'm not angry," I said, surprising us both. "I'm done." The word didn't slam. It landed. She flinched anyway, as if echoes can bruise when you expected them to bend. Clean lines, not clever lines. "This isn't a mistake," I told her. "It's a series of decisions. Invite, approve, meet, hide, laugh." I let each verb find its chair at the table. "You wanted me to stay safe while you tested if there was something safer." She reached once, reflex more than plan, and I moved my hands to my cup so we both had something to hold. "I love you," she said, voice small. "No," I answered, steady. "You love the insurance. You love what I covered, bills, holidays, a steady shoulder. But love doesn't humiliate its partner and call it a joke." I told her the terms again. Clean split, no support, you keep your car, I keep mine, divide the account, and be done. She blinked hard and nodded once, the way someone nods when the truth finally stops asking permission. The bell over the door rang for somebody else. The world, as usual, did not stop to watch us end. Endings should be ordinary. I tucked a 10 under my cup for the coffee I barely touched, stood without scraping the vinyl, and left Rachel her space in whatever came next. Harold rose from his booth, eyes searching my face like a medic checking color. "You handled that like a pro," he said quietly. "Calm is currency." I nodded, not because I needed praise, but because a man notices when another man witnesses the hard thing done right. Outside, the air felt different. Same street, new weight. I could drive straight to Harold's office and sign the next stack, or I could circle the block once to let my hands stop shaking. Either way, the path was the same. Documents, keys, boxes, the quiet work that turns a decision into a life. I looked through the window and saw the booth where I used to think love would sit forever. It was just Formica. So now what? Do I head to the office and make this official today? Fresh starts begin in familiar doorways. I walked back into Ryan's place after the diner and told him the whole thing, start to finish, like a game recap without excuses. He muted the TV and let the room breathe. I described the chrome, the bell on the door, the way Rachel's eyes looked used up, and how the word done didn't crash. It landed. Ryan didn't try to fix it. He slid a plate across the counter, leftover meatloaf, the kind you eat standing, and said, "Good." Not celebratory, accurate. We stacked the next steps out loud. Email Harold, scan the folder, box the garage shelf that's mine. He nodded at the hallway light he always leaves on for family and asked if I needed the spare room again. I said yes and meant no to regret. The house sounded like childhood. Washer thumping, a dog 2 doors down, the click of a thermostat. I slept in clean sheets that smelled like detergent and a decision I could live with. What I missed surprised me. It wasn't Rachel. It was being chosen at the end of a long day, the text that says drive safe, the second fork clinking the skillet, someone laughing in the right spot of your old stories. I missed the rhythm, not the singer. On the couch, I pictured 2 mugs on a Saturday morning and realized I'd been bargaining with a habit, not a partner. Men my age don't always say it out loud, but we want a home that feels like a landing, not an audition. Ryan handed me a fresh towel and I caught my face in the bathroom mirror. Tired, sure, but clear. The kind of clear you get after a storm washes the pollen off everything. I didn't want her back. I wanted my dignity and a life that doesn't make me explain it. If the loneliness I fear is just space I haven't filled yet, what happens if I stop fearing it and start building inside it instead? Paper ends what pride begins. Harold's office smelled like coffee and old books, the kind of place where people do adult things on purpose. He walked me through the stack, petition, financials, a simple proposal that divided what we built without pretending it was sacred. I initialed here, signed there, and kept my sentences short. He didn't fish for drama. He checked dates. "County processing is slow," he said. "Figure 3 months." I nodded. Waiting used to sound like torture. Today it sounded like a timeline I could plan around. Change mailing address, shift the auto pay, redirect the work emergency contact. He slid a copy into a manila folder and said, "I'll handle the rest." Outside, a city truck painted a crosswalk while 2 kids argued over a scooter. Ordinary life kept doing its lap. I sat in my truck, texted Ryan, signed, and felt the seat catch my weight like it had been waiting to. There's a peace in paperwork when it matches the truth. Bodies remember before minds catch up. I laced my old running shoes and jogged a slow block that first morning, knees popping like bubble wrap, lungs protesting the lie I've been telling them about being too busy. The second day stretched longer, past the ball fields, around the church lot, down the street where a veteran ties his flag to the same hook every sunrise. By the third, I found a groove, left, right, breathe on the exhale, grief turning into miles. I didn't chase a time. I chased quiet that didn't feel like punishment. Back at Ryan's, I stretched beside the dryer and saw my duffel by the door, half packed with a life that was getting lighter. At work, I took the tougher shift and didn't flinch when the boss said he noticed. In the evening, I grilled 2 steaks and saved one for tomorrow like a man thinking ahead again. The scale didn't change. Something else did. I could carry myself without asking permission. Closure rarely arrives with a speech. It showed up as a text. "You deserved better." No preface, no defense. I stared at it long enough to watch the screen dim, then typed 2 words that fit in my chest. "I know." Not to wound, just to match reality. I put the phone face down and stepped onto the porch. The sky over Ryan's street held that late blue you only notice when you're not rushing. Somewhere, a neighbor watered tomatoes. Somewhere else, a couple argued about a bill and then decided on pizza. I thought about the house I'll rent, the cheap grill I'll assemble, the wall where I'll hang nothing until something actually matters. I'm not auditioning to be anyone's safe option again. I'd rather eat alone than swallow my name. If the next call is from a future I haven't met yet, new keys, new routes, a dinner where I'm chosen first, am I ready to answer like a man who finally means it? New keys make a different kind of sound. The first afternoon in the rental, the door stuck a little, then gave, like it needed to learn my name. The place was small, 2 rooms and a kitchen that still smelled like someone else's coffee, but it was clean and mine. I set the mattress on the floor, leaned a borrowed lamp against the wall, and learned which blinds click if you raise them too fast. I scrubbed the sink because starting fresh should look like it. The living room window framed a maple and a slice of sky. I could already see where the grill would go. I changed the emergency contact at work, forwarded the mail, and slid a box of old photos under the bed until I decide what belongs on these walls. That first night, I ate takeout on the counter and listened to a neighborhood that didn't know my story and didn't need to. Quiet didn't feel empty. It felt like a room with the lights finally on. Fresh starts show up in ordinary emails. My boss pulled me into his office, closed the door without the heavy look, and said he'd noticed. Extra shifts, cleaner reports, a steadier crew when I'm on. He offered a bump and better hours, not because my life fell apart, but because I'd been building while it did. HR paperwork took 10 minutes. New title, different badge, emergency contact changed from Rachel to Ryan. I walked back to my truck lighter than when I walked in. On the seat, a hard hat and a lunch pail waited like they'd been saving me a spot. At the stoplight, I thought about men I know, dads, vets, coworkers, who rebuilt quietly and didn't make a speech about it. That's the work I want now. Fewer apologies, more done by sundown. If I can carry a new title without carrying the old weight, am I ready to step fully into the man this life is asking me to be? Rituals keep the rails steady. Ryan showed up Saturday with charcoal and a 6-pack, the kind of housewarming brothers do. We didn't christen the place with speeches. We tightened a loose hinge and laughed at the door that sticks. I assembled the cheap grill from the hardware store and got more satisfaction from aligning those stubborn bolts than I should admit. We seasoned the grate like Dad taught us: oil, heat, patience, and let steak talk while the radio called a ball game through a little static. The neighbor waved from his porch. We exchanged names and promised to borrow tools before buying new ones. Ryan took in the yard, the maple, the stretch of fence that could use a coat of paint, and said, "It'll come together." He meant the boards, and he meant me. When the sun dipped, we ate off paper plates and stacked them neat. I didn't feel alone. I felt newly responsible for a life that finally matched the keys in my pocket. Unexpected kindnesses open doors. I met Anna in the lobby between buildings, both of us juggling to-go cups and a stack of emails on our faces. We'd seen each other around, same coffee place, same parking deck shuffle, but we hadn't traded names. She works in accounting, the kind of brain that makes budgets tell the truth. We talked about the weather the way strangers do, then about decent tacos within walking distance, then about how mornings feel longer after certain kinds of nights. She didn't ask for my history. I didn't offer it. We laughed once, easy, and I noticed how ordinary felt like relief. A day later, she waved from the elevator and held the door without making it a thing. I sent a short note, "Good to meet you," and left it alone. Men my age learn not to turn hello into a promise we can't keep. I only knew this: I wasn't performing. I was showing up as myself and watching who stayed. Simple is a better test than perfect. A week later, Anna and I crossed paths at the Saturday market, both reaching for the same basket of tomatoes. We walked the stalls like neighbors, local honey, porch plants, a band trying out a Springsteen cover. There was no script to manage, no eggshells to tiptoe. She asked about the grill. I asked about books on her porch table. We traded 2 honest stories and let the rest wait. Back home, I set the tomatoes on my counter and pictured a dinner that doesn't audition anyone, just feeds 2 people who enjoy the same song. No drama, no pretending, just 2 real humans figuring out if there's a road worth walking. I wiped the cutting board, opened the window, and let the evening come in. If peace is finally the baseline and not a reward, is it time to invite her over, light the grill, and see whether choosing each other feels as natural as this quiet? A test comes when you don't schedule it. I pulled into a gas station on the way home, thinking about dinner and a game on low, and there she was, Rachel, under the harsh canopy lights, one hand on the pump, hair pulled back like the day we moved in together. She looked up the way people do when a car idles too long. For a breath, the world shrank to 2 lanes of concrete and a shared past. I could have rolled down the window, offered a nod, asked the soft questions that pretend to be kindness. Instead, I tightened my grip at 10 and 2 and watched the numbers on my dash like they were counting me forward. I wasn't cold, I was clear. A horn chirped behind me. The lane opened. I eased through, catching a last image in the side mirror. Her sleeve tugged by the wind, a plastic receipt flapping like a white flag. I didn't circle back. I didn't owe nostalgia my steering wheel. Laughter carries farther in a quiet house. That night, Anna and I split a pizza at a small place with a brick oven and paper menus you can write on. We traded the little stories that tell the big truth. Her dad's habit of fixing what isn't broken. My uncle who grills in the snow because he refuses to let winter boss him around. She didn't interview my past. I didn't audition my future. When the check came, I reached and she let me, then slipped $2 under the glass for the busboy who kept our water full. On the walk to our cars, the air held that soft, late breeze that makes parking lots feel almost kind. "Drive safe," she said. It landed like a small, solid thing I could put in my pocket. At the red light, I caught myself smiling for no audience. Do I keep letting this grow at the speed of trust, or sit her down and tell the whole story before Friday? Some doors knock themselves. Back home, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. "It's Colin. I owe you an apology." 10 words that tried to start a new chapter in a book I'd already shelved. I stared at it long enough to feel the old burn try to warm up, then pictured the gas station, the pizza place, the map of where I'm headed. I didn't need his version to stabilize mine. I deleted the message and blocked the number with the same care I used to pay bills. Calm, on time, no speech, not to be righteous. To be done. I rinsed 2 plates, wiped the counter, and set tomorrow's coffee to brew at 6. The house answered with its soft night sounds. Refrigerator hum, the tick of cooling pipes, a train somewhere far enough away to be a lullaby. I wasn't moving on out of spite. I was moving forward because forward is where my life is. Some debts you don't collect. You just stop carrying. Peace doesn't ask for applause. It shows up in normal-sized moments, waking before the alarm and liking the quiet, finding the missing socket wrench exactly where I said I'd put it, realizing I'm hungry and cooking enough for one without feeling like I failed the room. Saturday morning, I mowed the small strip of grass out back, lined straight enough to make Dad proud, then wiped down the grill and watched smoke curl like a promise that didn't need a witness. I called the internet company, changed the billing address, and felt the tiny click of a life rerouting to the right mailbox. In the afternoon, I sat on the porch with a paperback and let the neighborhood play its soundtrack. Kids arguing about rules, a dog convinced it's a cop, a couple learning a new dance with their finances. Nothing in me was racing the clock. Nothing in me was bracing for an ambush smile. I wasn't happy on command. I was steady on purpose. Silence has a sound if you give it walls. Ryan stopped by with a ladder and a joke about how my place looks like a witness protection safe house. We talked on the porch until the light dipped. Then he asked the question he's earned. "You good?" I told him the truth. Better than I thought I'd be. We didn't toast to healing or write it on a plaque. We fixed a loose gutter, dragged the trash can to the curb, and let the night do what nights do. Before he left, I said, "Turns out quiet isn't empty. It's a room I get to furnish." He grinned. "So furnish it." After he drove off, I stood in the doorway listening to the soft thud of my own house settling. The last framed wedding photo is still in a box by the closet. History, not a curse. Tomorrow, do I finally take it to the thrift store and call Anna about Friday dinner? Or keep it one more week and let the quiet decide? 1 year changes the temperature of a memory. The text arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while I was fixing a loose cabinet hinge. You were right about everything. No build-up, no volley, just a sentence from a number I hadn't typed in months. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and sawdust. The radio mumbled a ball game 2 stations away. I set the driver down and let the words sit where the screw should go. Truth be told, I didn't feel a surge. No victory lap, no anger reheat. Just the kind of quiet you get after mowing a yard straight and seeing the lines hold. Outside, a delivery truck hissed to a stop. Inside, my coffee had cooled to still fine. I read the message again and caught what it didn't ask for. A reply, a rescue, a rerun. A year earlier, I'd have reached for a speech. Today, I reached for the hinge. Some apologies land like rain on a roof you already replaced. Then the ping I didn't expect in me, a calm I could name. I typed 2 words, I am. Not smug, not barbed, a statement with a period that felt earned. I deleted the thread and watched the screen return to my home page, the way a dock looks after a boat pulls away. The house gave me its small sounds, the hum of the fridge, the tick under the water heater, the neighbor rolling his trash bin to the curb. I slipped the phone face down and tightened the hinge until it sat flush, door closing with that honest click you can't fake. In the past, I would have reread, drafted, explained. Today, I chose a clean cut over a clean burn. I poured the cold coffee over ice and stood in the doorway, letting the late light find the dust I'd missed. If I can answer the past with 2 honest words and no echo, what else in my life deserves that same kind of simple clarity? Small evenings measure big growth. I sank into the porch chair with a paperback, pages already softened by being read, and let the maple toss shade across my shoes. The phone lit with a name I actually wanted to see. Dinner tonight? Anna wrote. I pictured the market tomatoes we'd joked about, the smile that doesn't check a mirror first, the way she lets silence breathe without trying to edit it. I texted back a time and, I'll bring the salad, then dog-eared the chapter like a man who plans to return. The street did its usual parade, a jogger with a stubborn knee, a dad training a tricycle crew chief, the mail truck right on time for the neighbor who waits on checks. It all felt earned, not delicate. A year ago, I counted losses. Tonight, I counted places to set silverware. I rinsed my hands, grabbed the keys hanging on the hook by the door, and knew exactly which lane I'd take. Old habits, good ones, come back like muscle memory. I pulled into Anna's complex and found the same spot beneath the sweet gum tree, the one that drops spiky balls you learn to step around. She opened the door with a smile that felt like an answer to a question I forgot I was asking. We chopped and stirred and told the small true stories of a Tuesday. The printer that jammed, the coworker who insists the office needs a plant and a puppy, the way rain makes traffic forget how to be cars. We ate at her tiny table, knees almost touching, and laughed the kind of laugh that doesn't need a soundtrack. When I stood to do dishes, she blocked me with a dish towel like a referee and said, "You cooked, I'll clean." I stepped aside and meant it. On my way out, I squeezed her hand and said, "Wouldn't miss it," and the words fit like a jacket I grew back into. Closure can be a road you don't turn down. Driving home, I passed the old exit without thinking, then realized what I hadn't felt. No tight chest, no curiosity itch, just the steady thrum of a truck that knows its route. The rental I used to share sat somewhere past that light, but it felt like a city I once visited, not a map I live on. At the next intersection, the signal blinked red to green and I chose straight, the way you do when the GPS already updated. Back at my place, I set tomorrow's coffee, checked that the back gate latched, and stood in the doorway to listen to my house make its soft night noises. A year ago, I walked away with nothing but my self-respect. Turns out, that was a toolkit. Now there's more. A table set for 2, a calm phone, a name that calls mine without testing it. So here's the last question. Do I box up that last photo tomorrow and finally hang something new? Backyards teach a man how to listen. I sat in a cheap chair with a cold beer sweating into my palm and watched the sky shift from copper to that late blue that makes you forgive the day. The grill clicked as it cooled. Somewhere a radio mumbled an old country song. I could smell cut grass and a neighbor's laundry, clean and ordinary, the scent of a life that doesn't need explaining. I thought about the last year the way you think about a road you survived, the the potholes, the turns you took on instinct, the stretch where the view finally opened up. I took a long pull and felt my shoulders drop to their proper height. No speeches to rehearse, no phone lighting up like a fire drill. A dog barked twice and then decided the world could wait. The maple's leaves traded secrets over my head. Peace, it turns out, isn't loud. It's a room you learn to furnish. One chair, one honest breath, one promise you keep to yourself. Here's the truth I can say out loud now. The night I walked out of that party, I thought I was losing everything. House, routine, the version of us I kept trying to sell to myself. But the only thing I actually set down was a lie. In its place, I picked up simpler tools. Sleep that arrives, a calendar I own, a voice that doesn't need to raise itself to be heard. I think about dads I know who rebuilt after layoffs, a veteran at my gym who taught me that pain becomes instruction if you show up for class. I showed up. I learned the difference between being chosen and being convenient, between keeping the peace and keeping myself. I took another sip and let the evening sit with me like an old friend who doesn't need small talk. If the best thing I ever did was hand over a ring and reclaim my name, what else am I ready to build now that the noise is gone? Beginnings don't always look heroic. Sometimes they look like routine done right. I rinsed the bottle, set it in the bin, and felt a quiet pride in small chores done without bargaining. The porch light hummed, steady as a promise I finally trust. Inside, a clean sink, 2 plates ready for whoever I invite, a calendar with boxes that mean something again. I'm not chasing proof anymore. I'm living evidence, running shoes by the door, a grill that remembers every Sunday I didn't quit, a new habit of answering softly and standing firm. Men my age learn to measure strength by what we carry and by what we refuse to carry. Tonight I carry my own keys, my own word, the simple faith that decent days add up. I looked at the dark yard and didn't feel alone. I felt new. Like a truck with miles behind it and more ahead, engine warm, map clear. This isn't the end of a marriage, it's the start of a man. I walked out of that party carrying one thing, self-respect, and it turned out to be enough to build a new life. Not a movie ending, a true one. Paperwork, mornings, a table set for 2 when it's honest, for 1 when it's not. If any of this sounds like your street, if you've stood in a kitchen, a phone buzzing while your gut told the truth, hear me. You're allowed to draw a line and be a decent man. Choose the next right thing, then the next. That's how peace stacks. If this story helped you breathe, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Leave a comment with the boundary you kept or the one you're about to. Share this with a brother, a coworker, a dad who needs a hand on his shoulder. Sometimes what we lose isn't life, it's weight that kept us from living. I walked away with my name, and that was enough to start again.